Hey guys, it's M4J here and welcome back to Global Ventures here on Planet Coaster. Today we are going to be doing just a few minor details here and there. No major reconstruction projects or anything like that, apart from the first couple of minutes here, because we are rerouting the railway. This was an idea I had originally for the railway, and then I seized an opportunity to instead thread the track through the structures of Antony and Cleopatra, and it was only not the last time I opened the game, but probably the time before, that I realised that the railway just didn't fit where it was. And it looked a lot better if it was kind of tucked away a little bit, because the railway doesn't have a station in the Valley of the Nile section, which is where we are now. So it didn't really make sense to make the railway a focal point. It does still cross over quite close to the track of Antony here, and it does pass underneath the mid-course brake run, and it then passes over the two stations for Antony and Cleopatra, and then it just goes over the top of Cleopatra's double corkscrew final helix. So it's kind of tucked out of the way, but it's still very much present. And that's the key thing for this, really, was to kind of make it a little less obvious, but also make it so that it still functions correctly. So that was me just checking the speed limit there. The train doesn't speed up down that final gradient, which is good. We're also then going to quickly tweak the gondola system a little bit more as well. Now, I had that really nice standardized method for building the gondola before, and I couldn't remember what the specifications were that I used. I think it was a 20 degrees slope. It might have been 25 degrees. And then maximum size between each pylon there, apart from where the tyre section in the middle is. It's a little bit closer together at that stage, and then one station piece long, and then you put the motor in at the end. So it's quite close to the railway here, but it's going to be enclosed in like quite a rustic looking wooden, what's the word, boathouse type building. So it's going to be hidden away mostly, and you'll see there the boats that take you to the Vibes of the Island section of the park do actually go underneath the gondola system. Again, I might move that slightly just so that it's not that intrusive. We will see. Now, this is the main bulk of today's episode, and I haven't actually decided on a title for this week's episode, but it will be something to do with pathways, I imagine, because we have this very nice dueling B&M cluster of coasters here. And we needed to get a queue line to both of them, and we needed to get an exit path to both of them. So I've moved the entrances and exits to the right, as you can see, and at this point I'm just realising that I can thread a path right through the middle there between the two coasters, and fits very nicely under Antony's Cobra roll. This is the final, what you can see here is where the final pathway will go. I had to do a little bit of land tweaking, but actually I wanted this part of the park to be very up and down, so no flat sections necessarily. But building the queues for these two coasters on the flat section gave me a really good opportunity to actually create a nice little plateau here for the pathway to run through. And it's something I've noticed watching a lot of videos and seeing a lot of photos of theme parks, is you don't have to have the pathways be perfect. As long as they're relatively even, because there's people of various abilities who may or may not be able to walk on uneven ground. So long as it's not like an absolute challenge, it doesn't matter too much if the pathway isn't entirely flat and also isn't entirely this huge sprawling avenue that people can walk down. The main focal point of this area is these two coasters. So a lot of people will be gathering around to watch these two coasters. If this was a real park, it doesn't happen in the game, unfortunately. But what this does mean is it's a really good opportunity to actually build a funnel system. So the pathway, it acts like a funnel. It guides guests through the area and out the other side. Because if you're coming in from Welcome Plaza into the Valley of the Nile section, my goal as the designer of this park is to get you through the area and into the queue lines for these coasters as quickly as possible. And the queue line is in the middle of the area. There's a nice little concourse. You might have seen me build the little round section there. That's where the queue lines will start. So it's to get people through the coasters and actually into the queue as quickly as possible. And I think I've achieved that to an extent. You guide people through, you keep teasing them with bits of the coaster. So the first thing you see when you come through is the dive loop of Antony. And then as you walk through, you see the vertical loop of Cleopatra, and then you see the Cobra roll of Antony. And it just guides you all the way through, step by step, until eventually you come across a big sign that says Q here. And then, you know, that's the end goal, is to get people there as quickly as possible. This is also something that I built. I kind of designed it in a hurry, and then again followed that mentality of it doesn't have to be perfect. And this is the exit path to Antony that joins up with the exit path to Cleopatra, travels over the main pathway, and then down into the gift shop, which will also be one of the main gift shops of the Valley of the Nile section of the park. And again, one thing to remember is it doesn't have to be perfect. One of the other things I wanted to have in this area of the park is you won't be able to see one side from the other. So what I mean is there'll be lots of buildings, obstacles, landscape, raised walkways, lots of different things that'll mean you can't just stand at one end of the section and look right the way across to the other. That would be impossible. And again, I'd like to think I've achieved that. I would like to think I've achieved that. To an extent, I've achieved that. And this raised pathway here is one of several. This will probably be the only guest accessible one. The rest might be, in reality, it'd be staff only, but it'll kind of be like the Disney idea of it exists but no one is really there to use it kind of thing. And these areas are just designed to sort of break up the land a little bit more, make it a little bit more realistic looking, make it look like a lived in town essentially, because that's what this is supposed to be. There's the gift shop that's just gone in there. The actual stalls where guests will be able to buy things from will be right at the back. So as you come off the two coasters, you will walk past the stall. That's done by design. Something else I've noticed a lot in theme parks, it's always been a thing, but I've only really just noticed it, is you don't just get deposited into the gift shop at the end of the ride. You get deposited into the far end of the gift shop, and you have to walk through the entirety of it to get out. These people aren't stupid, they are incredibly clever. They know exactly how to make you part ways with your money. And, you know, why not add that into Global Ventures? At the end of the day, it's a real-life inspired park. Why not actually use some real-life elements such as exit through the gift shop, which is a Disney invention, by the way, for those of you that didn't know. It's a small world at the 64 World's Fair, which I believe was in Chicago. It might have been in New York. No, I think it was in Chicago. I'm going to check that, actually. 1964 World's Fair. Oh, it was New York. Of course it was New York. Yeah, It's a Small World was there. Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln was there. The Ford Skyway, I think it was called, was there, which was the inspiration for the People Mover system. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, the It's a Small World attraction at the 64 World's Fair was the first ever amusement park type attraction to include exit through the gift shop. And it became a very Disney feature, and it's featured very heavily in not just Disney parks but all parks around the world ever since. So we are using that. We've already used it for a lot of rides around other sections of the park, and we are now including it in the Egyptian section as well. This is me building the queue lines. Now I'm okay with these. I'm okay with these. The reason I'm a little bit skeptical, you can kind of see me here realizing, the queues are quite close to the park boundary, and I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to bury this underground once it's done. You'll also see in a second when I add the priority queues, it becomes even more challenging. The other thing I'm not a massive fan of right now, which might actually be an easy fix, Antony's queue path is a lot longer than Cleopatra's. So what I might do is that little L shape, the upside down L that you saw in the middle there that was part of Antony's queue, I might replace that with Cleopatra's queue. So kind of fill that space a little bit more and make it so that in fact I'm just holding back a little bit because I might end up cutting that back anyway. But what I basically mean is take some of the queue path from Antony and make it for Cleopatra instead. Try and make the queues roughly the same length. I do feel out of the two coasters, Antony, if these were real, would be more popular. Not because it's a flawless coaster, but because I just feel like it's a little bit more intense. It has a lot of head chopper moments, it has a lot of airtime moments. I think the inversion count is the same, but Antony's inversions are a little bit more intense in terms of what they do. Plus it's got the signature Cobra roll, and you can never go wrong with one of those, despite what some people on Reddit might say. So yeah, this is me adding the priority queues. Cleopatra's was very easy. Antony's not so much. But again, in the past I might have sort of balked at this and thought, is this such a good idea? But this time around I used it as an opportunity. I want to build things that are sort of a bit out there and a bit different in this area of the park, because I really want to make each area different from the next one. Otherwise they're not going to be very noteworthy, are they? So this is again using that raised walkways idea. These are all going to be little buildings. Originally I was going to cover it all in one big building, but I think I'm just going to make little buildings, little huts, little... maybe not huts, but... I mean, the story of the two rides is meant to be Antony versus Cleopatra, because although they were lovers for a period, I think there was also a period where they hated one another. I'm going to do some more research on that before I settle on the storyline completely. But this area here that you see me building, this is another opportunity to build the pathway through and over the top of Cleopatra's bow tie. Is that what it's called? I think that is what it's called. What's it called? Batwing. I think it's Batwing. And then also underneath Scarab's overbanked turn, which I was going to rebuild and reposition, but this has actually worked out quite well. So I think I'll be keeping it as is, because I don't at the moment see a reason necessarily to move it. You can see here I'm just trying to squeeze it through, and then it comes out the other side quite nicely, in fact. So yeah, the Batwing of Cleopatra, I'm going to build a snake pit using animatronic snakes at the bottom, because some of you might know, some of you might not know, Cleopatra sort of committed suicide, if you can call it that. She let herself be get bitten by a venomous snake, is what happened. And she used to also bath in ox milk, I think it was, as well. These are all little things that I'm going to try and tie in somewhere in the ride. So building the station building, I'm going to kind of design it like a palace, but with lots of different rooms that you walk through depending on which side you're riding. So if you're riding Cleopatra, it's going to be like the Queen's quarters and things like that. If you're riding the Antony side, it's going to be like the guest bedroom and banquet hall and whatever else would have existed back then. Again, I'll do research before I build this. I won't just knock something up and then say, oh, this ties in this way. I will put some thought into it, don't worry. And if there's any historians out there watching this, I am so sorry. I did do a little bit of reading of Cleopatra way back when. I think we studied some of it at school as well, but it's gone in one ear and out the other, as you can tell. So this is the last sort of little nitpick thing that was bugging me, and I'm sure it was bugging some of you guys as well. This Cobra roll was floating. Even before I built the paths, there was something to do with the support structure of Cleopatra that was making it so that the Cobra roll support wasn't appearing. So I have now fixed that. I've built a custom support. It's not symmetrical on either side, and it does create a nice little head chopper effect. As you come out of the Cobra roll, you nearly strike the support that you can see me building here. And I really like this result. I think it looks really cool. I'm not a huge fan of the way the two supports link up before entering the track. And what I might do is replace these large poles with smaller ones. But I'll leave that one for a bit. I'll sit on it and come back to it, because I think overall it does work. It works very well as a support. It does look realistic. It fits quite nicely. It doesn't interact with any other supports or anything like that. You can see me moving it there so that it threads through the 0G roll support of Cleopatra. And yeah, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with this whole ride in general now. At one point I was considering sinking these two coasters down into the ground, but actually rebuilding the railway kind of made me realise that I could just rebuild the gondola as well. So the gondola doesn't sit right next to the dive loop of Antony anymore, which means I've now got all that room to build the external building to this whole area of the park, and then also the terraforming to cover it in terrain to make it dark inside. There's plenty of space now to do that, so I'm really happy with that result. And I have checked the clearances. I did a POV of both coasters after I finished building the paths and this custom support, and it all works. It all looks great. The path system is really good. It also adds another few interaction elements. So the coasters don't interact so much between themselves anymore, but there's a really nice interaction element where from the vertical loop into the dive loop of Cleopatra, it kind of threads the needle between the two. You could say it threaded the Cleopatra's needle. Haha, badum-tsh. It threads the needle between the pathway, the main pathway, and the exit pathway, which looks really cool. The fact that the vertical loop is built directly on top of the pathway as well looks awesome. And the Cobra rolls wrapping around the path like this as well looks incredible. Plus the way it interacts with the Batwing as well. And yes, anyone who's wondering, I will put up safety nets. I will try and hide them as much as possible, but again, in the interest of realism, I'll put up some safety nets to catch loose articles if anyone does take them on the ride with them. That just about does it for this video. Next time out, we will be starting to add some more terraforming. We'll be painting the ground, and we'll be building the Q buildings and other little miscellaneous buildings around this area as well, because I'm pretty much set with the position of the rides now. So we'll be adding a couple more flat rides in, but overall, we're pretty much done with the base of this area of the park. So until then, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you enjoyed the series. Drop some comments down below with feedback and ideas for future episodes. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support, and until next time, I will see you soon.